This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, so yeah, enough of the opening remarks. You guys came for React, not to hear me talk. If you're watching this recording, welcome, hello. This is the intro to React Part 2. Part 1, there's a link for, we'll provide that. But this is Part 2 presented by Edwin Broce. So yeah, I guess without further ado, Edwin, we're going to turn it over to you. So Edwin Broce, everyone.
All right. First of all, thank you for having me again. Really appreciate you guys taking the time to spend your Wednesday night with me, hearing a little bit about React and pretty much just gush about it and try to, at the same time, try to teach you guys just the basic of how React operate. And again, as Brian was mentioning earlier, this is the second part of the presentation. So you're gonna head and and don't worry if you didn't went to it first, and I'm gonna go over most of the things that I presented at time too, so we can all go and be in the same space. And I think today is gonna be really neat, and I really like the topic because today we're gonna pretty much hit the heart, the core of React, and we're gonna cover what is two-way binding. We're gonna cover what is lifecycle methods, and we're gonna finally deploy your very small but very useful application. So, without further ado, let's start with just a review of what we did the last time. And if we go here, we start with app planning, and we're gonna design a very small, very simple list application. And this can be a list of tasks or like a shopping list application. And the first step that we did the last time was to break it down. No? So we break it down into pieces. So we have a header. We have this that's gonna be a we're gonna grab a very bad dad joke from an API and put it in here. And the last one is the list. No? And the list is actually subdivided into a series of tasks. So we're going to have our task and we're going to have a button. All right. And now in React, we need to differentiate when we're going to be using a state. And a state is basically a set of variables. I think a good way to think about this as a set of variables that are going to dictate changes in the front end. And that will make more sense once we go to the demo. So components means actually presentational components, and it's pretty much a stateless components. So they're not going to be using a state or modifying what is displaying anyway. So we went ahead and we will run through all this in the last presentation. We're going to be using a lot of the list and tasks today, and we're going to utilize our jokes.js element to make a call from the API. Actually, let me jump into the demo right away. Let me see, I need this and I need this. Perfect. So one thing I want to mention first is that I want to go over everything that we have done. And you can see this is how our, our small application is looking so far. And you remember what we did, what we showcased just a minute ago. You will notice here in the left that we have components and we have containers. Components, we only have one of them. We're going to have header. And the reason why we have headers here only and not the task, because I think it's really nice when you go ahead and you have a parent component and you put the son or the children component underneath it. So our list is actually containing our task. And apart from that, we haven't made many changes to the application, actually. We see our index.jx file is what is injecting or pretty much grabbing our whole real application and putting that into a root ID div that is going to be in the only HTML document in the whole application. Apart from that, our app will be simply displaying the three large components that we have. And if we go and take a quick look to each one of these components, we notice that our header is simply graphically. And if you guys, when I'm done with this presentation, you want to move on with this demo and just take it as a base for a next step you want to take on your own, I think it would be a great step to make something with this field, or it's a menu button in here that you guys can add new functionality in there. But we're not going to be touching this component at all today. We're going to be focusing actually in our functional components. And here's our jokes. You see here are declared some styling elements. And this will look very similar to CSS, just that we use camel case instead of hyphens. You see here when I put the styles in. We're going to be touching this component later on, where we're going to be grabbing our joke from the API instead of just hard coding it like we are doing it so far. And our last two components that we're going to spend most of the time on, it's going to be our list and it's going to be our task component. And if we go through the list component, we notice that this component actually manages state. And right now, we're not going to cover React hooks today. So we're going to be using class-based components. And as you see here, I declare the state, and we have a basic list that we start with. And before I forget, actually, let's mark this element as false, since we want to start off with every single element in the list as incomplete so far. So apart from that, we're rendering, here we introduce what is fragment, that is what we call a higher order component. That's pretty much just, in this case, functionally it's just working as a div for us. We have our unordered list that has the task. And you see here we have this mat method that's pretty much gonna grab and iterate over every single one of our things to do here. And it's gonna return a task component for each one of those. So that's why it's displaying each one of these 3 tasks in here. Apart from that, we have this div that has the plus symbol in here, and that's the button of the application. Let me showcase console right now. And also, we knew that we have an issue right now that we're gonna cover on later on as we are developing. Apart from that, are there any questions right now? All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Now, right now, just to cover the application again, we have something that is looking really nice, but if I click in here, if I click anything or try to add a task, and nothing at all happens. So let's change that. And in order to change that, we're gonna start using React to manage the state and change things dynamically here. The first step in that direction is to add an on-click event to our button. Let's start with the button first, because I think it will be the easiest part to see, and we're going to be incrementally increasing it is a little harder to do. And I think it will paint a really clear picture of everything. So let's go ahead and click. Let's go ahead and declare a method here. Let's call it add task. All right. We're going to declare this method. We'll put it right here. For now, I just want to put a console log on it. All right, so if I go ahead and I save this, go ahead and save. Now, you will notice something right away. If we go down here to our console, we notice that this is already been triggered twice, in fact. We haven't even touched the button. And the reason behind this is because when you add parentheses to a function, which seems to be something that you would think will work right away, when you add parentheses to a function in JavaScript, it will actually call the function when it is being loading. So when this component is being what we call in React mounted, it's going to call this function. Actually, it's going to do it twice. And the reason why it's doing it twice is because in our index file, we have this in here that's called react.extreme mode. And this is something that React uses for testing purposes. So when you have a class-based component, when you have certain components in React, it's going to go ahead and call it twice just for testing purposes, nothing else. We don't really going to be utilizing this in this presentation. So for the sake of clarity, I'm going to go ahead and just remove this from our app for now. I'm going to go ahead and save this. You're going to notice that it's still being called, but it's called only once this time. So now we don't want to have the parentheses here. So let's get rid of the parentheses. Go ahead and save this. Now go ahead, we're good now. If I click the plus, we have our console log in there now. Now let's go ahead, and the first step that we want to take in this direction, and probably the thing that comes to mind if we want to add an element to the state, if somebody minds, if it's not yours, is that we can try to go ahead and just push an element to the state now. So let's add a name. We initialize the value of is completed as false. So let's go ahead and save this. I'm gonna click in the button. Actually, let me add a console log in here first. Let me add it back so we have a more clear picture. There we go. You will notice that React immediately show an error here. And this is something that is very important if you are learning React. And this is something that we were touching on earlier, funny enough, before we started the presentation. There is the React cannot read properly a state of undefined. And what's happening here is that you see how we're using the word this in here? This in a JavaScript function that is listening to an event is referring to the event target, not to the class in this case. So what React is doing is that it's going in the front end and it's looking at this button and it's looking at the div and the button that has the onClick event, and it's saying, okay, I don't see anything in here called state. So what are you trying to do? So it's very confused about what's happening. This is kind of a thing that we use a workaround that is called binding. What binding is, and there's two ways to implement this, and actually you will see one way more than other. And what binding is just going ahead and do something like this. And what this is telling to React is that this it's kind of weird to explain. We don't say this a lot. Then this in this place is referring to the actual class and it's not referring to the event listener. Okay, so that's basically what we're doing here by adding the word binding. But there is an even better way to do this. I think it's easier to understand too. So we declare here an arrow function. We put in here this dot task. There we go. So what is happening here? Now, just to rephrase, an arrow function is pretty much the same thing as me saying pretty much the same thing as me saying something like this, no? Just a shorter way to declare our functions. And since we're only returning an element, we don't know how to put it. We don't have to put the brackets or the word return on it, no? Basically, what we're doing is that we're declaring a function that is calling our actual function, basically. So this function in here actually has the parameters of the event target, and this function in here is going to have the parameters of our class. So let's go ahead and save this. And now clicking the button, and you see our task is being added, or our console log is being logged out. No? Now, you notice something that we're doing here that is kind of a little odd to see, and this will be something that if you're learning React, you probably did at least once, and it's that this is actually not something valid that we can do. And the reason behind it is because we're trying to modify a state. Like you see, I'm adding a button to the state, and something that confirms this is that if I click in here, I can click as many times as I want. Not a single other element is being added. And the reason behind that is that we cannot modify the state directly like this. Because React, as I remember we're talking on this in the last presentation, React needs to know and need to be able to track the things that we're doing. In order to do that, we need to indicate, be very, very clear with React when we are modifying a state and when we are not. So instead of doing this, let's go ahead and declare a temp, let's call it list. And this is gonna be equals to, oops, let's go like this. And we're gonna grab this and push it. Now, before I move any further, this is actually not going to work neither. And the reason behind that is because of the way JavaScript works. JavaScript, when you declare an object or an array and you assign it to a different variable, it's actually not creating a new variable. It's actually just assigning the same place in memory to a different variable. So for us to make this work, this would be exactly the same as changing the original value. So React is not gonna like this because we are not changing it in a way that is appropriate for it. So what we're gonna do instead is just a third option that we have. That is what we call an spread operator. So we're gonna put this into brackets and put 3 dots at the start. This is a ES6 feature that we have that will allow us to grab every single element from the list. So what's happening here is that it's grabbing every single element one by one. So it's grabbing the first one, it's putting in this array. It's grabbing the second one, putting in the same array, and doing the same for the last one. And that way it's efficiently creating a copy of the first one and not modifying the original. So we go ahead and do that. And so, we have a copy array ready. How modify the original then? Well, we go ahead and use what's called set state. Set state is a property that we have in our class that will allow us to modify the state. So we say list is equal to template. We go ahead and save this. We press our plus, and we see we have new elements being added. So this is working completely fine. And I just want to emphasize in this, this structure that you're seeing here, you will see a lot on React, and it's utilized everywhere. You want to see this utilized a couple more times as we develop the application. Let's do a couple more functions here before we ask for questions. So let's go ahead, and now we know how to add them. Now let's do one more thing. Let's go ahead and try to delete them. In order to do that, we're going to have to also open our task.js file. And to make this easy to look, I'm going to split the screen on two, put this a little to the side, close this. All right, so go ahead and see what we're going to do here. So let's start the same way that we started earlier. Let's start with, how can I call it? Delete task, I guess. Let's start with just having a console log here. This is really good because it's also a really good review of what we did the last time. So we have some delete tasks in here. Sorry. And let me make this a little bit more readable. Couple this. Here we go. All right. So now we're going to pass another property to our task.js file. So this time we're passing a function. So let's call it, one thing that I like to do is I like to use past tense for the variables. It's just a naming convention I adapted, but you can use any convention you want. So let's call this one deleted. And let's call this that deleted. Oh, sorry, delete task. And now we know that we need to call it with our binding here. Let's go ahead and put our function in there. Now we can use this delete property down here. So where we have the X, we want to go ahead and add an on-click event, exactly like we did with the, with the add button. And we're receiving as a property, so props that deleted. I'm gonna go ahead and save this. We click in here, and we see we're triggering our function correctly. Now, one thing that we need to notice here is that you see we have three delete buttons, so we're gonna have to find a way to differentiate which item is the one we're deleting. And lucky enough for us, we're using index here as a single identifier for each one of the elements. And this, in a case of a real application, this will likely be like a sort of unique identifier that's coming from an API, or some kind of unique identifier you have for each one of the things that's been displayed. But in our case, an index works just fine. So let's go ahead and add that in here. And here I'm going to actually call it ID. And as I mentioned before, we're going to use a lot of the code that we already write. So we can grab and just actually utilize these two pieces of code again. And now this time, what we want to do is that instead of adding one, we want to subtract some templates. And we want to trigger the position that we have the ID on. That splice. And splice is going to remove an element of the array in the index that we give it. So I'm going to say we want to remove in the position. Oops, actually, I need to There we go. It's going to remove it in the position index, and I only want to remove one element. And apart from that, we're just adding that to the list. And we save this. Let's go ahead and add, that works, and remove, that works too. Perfect. So we have those two things down. Before we take a break, let's do one more thing here. I think it's going to be a little more interesting. Let's go ahead and try to toggle something as complete or incomplete. And right now we have something interesting happening here. If I go ahead and click, you notice the cursor appear. And the reason is that these are input field. Obviously, that's the default behavior of an input field. So we run into a little of a predicament here because we want to be able to edit the task. We want to do it by clicking this edit button. We don't want to do it by just click on it and typing, no? And so what we're going to do instead is that for now, we're going to go ahead and add a property called read only. And what this is going to do, if I save this and I save this, if we go ahead and we try to click on it, you notice that the cursor doesn't appear. So these are now just read only. Also, the warning goes away, and I'm going to go back to a reason why that happened later. So yeah, so you notice we cannot edit them, no? But for now, let's don't worry about that. Let's worry more about our toggle completed functionality. And actually, that sounds like a really good name for the actual function. So toggle completed, toggle completion. There we go. Sounds even better. And this one, similar to the one before, we're gonna need to know which is the element that we are toggling. So let's put an ID in there, and let's put a console log again. All right. So exactly like we did with our deleted, I'm gonna go ahead and pass it down. And this time let's call it, oh gosh, what's a good name? Toggle completion, maybe? Yeah. No, toggle completed. There we go. That's even better name. All right. So we have toggle completed, and we have exactly like we did with the other two elements. With the other element, we're gonna go ahead and add a click event here. Let's call click. Oh no, actually, sorry, I'm drawing the wrong place to our input field. When I call in on click equals to props that toggle complete. Perfect. All right, so we got that. We save it. Save it in here. We see if I declare everything correctly. Everything's looking good. Let's go ahead and click in our task, and we're toggling the completed now. And again, just like we did with the other two functions, we're gonna go ahead and copy the original one and set the state again. And this time we're doing something a little different. Though. Instead of deleting or adding one, we're gonna check temps list in the position ID. And this time we're gonna modify the is complete attribute of our object. And everything we wanna do is just toggle it. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's grab the same one and let's put a note in there. So you see if it's true, it's gonna return false, and if it's false, it's gonna give us true. So go ahead and click it, and you notice our tasks are marked complete and incomplete. So we have this done, we can delete tasks, or we can add new ones. And before we move along and we cover well, I think it's a big mystery now how we're gonna edit this. I wanna see if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I have one question. You've changed the code since, but I don't know, not the event bubbling, but the thing where it did it twice because of the React strict mode. And then you just said, hey, let's just remove the parentheses, and not only does it once. And then, like I said, you've since evolved the code, but is there any reason to choose one over the other? You know, if you were sticking with that, you know, is there any downside to removing the parentheses or keeping them? Or?
Yeah, actually, that's a really good question because actually React by default is a good idea to leave it there and leave it do testing. But right now, just because this is a very simple example, and I think it will be more clear if we only mount the components once, I'm gonna remove it. But in a normal case scenario, you will just leave it, you know. And you can do a lot. Gosh, there is so much that you can do with testing too, you know. Yeah.
I know.
Right. Any other questions? All right. So let's go ahead and let's move along. Let's see. Let's tackle the elephant in the room. How the hell are we gonna be able to edit this? The first thing we wanna do is that I'm gonna declare a function in which it's not gonna be actually almost not related with React, but we're gonna click on here, and we need to make this editable again, no? So let's go ahead and declare that function. Let's call it, I guess, edit task. Give me 1 second. Let's call it render editable. That sounds like a good name. And we need the ID again, because we need to know which one of the 3 elements we're going to be targeting here. And for now, let's follow the process we have been doing. Put a console log in there. And it's render editable exactly like we did with the other two. Go ahead and just okay. And I call this render editable. Perfect. Render editable, and this is gonna be on click for our pencil button. Go ahead and grab our function, pass the property over, save this. We click in the pencil, and it's editable. Let's go ahead and make this change now. So first thing first, we want to go ahead and just render the function editable. And for that, we need to remove the read-only element that we added earlier. So this is going to be just plain old JavaScript. So document that, actually, let's do query selector. We want to choose the ID that is, I believe we call them. Good thing we have an ID for each one of these. Call it task underscore and the ID. So let's call it task underscore, and I put my variable here with parentheses, and I put my ID in. Now we don't want to target the list element, we want to target the input field. So let's put input, and let's put this in a variable. How do we call it? Field. Oh, not the most distinctive name, but we do for us. Field that, and now we want to put remove attribute, and let's remove read only. I want to emphasize here something we touched in the last presentation. Read only here is camel case, because React actually is doing things in the backend with this property. You know, this is no, and again, this is no HTML. It's actually JSX. So React in the backend need to do some changes, need to do some tweaking to this. But when we're gonna refer to it in HTML, it will be just lowercase read only. Let's do one more thing with this. I think it would be nice when you click the button if we actually shift focus to our field. And actually, I think I can be a better name for this. Selected field. There we go. A little bit more descriptive. We save this. We click the button, and we see our field, our cursor come back, and we're able to edit. But again, if we try to type something, nothing happened. So let's cover that right now. And I think this is something that is really important, because I think this is something that is hard to understand sometimes. And this is the heart of what two-way binding is. And it's that right now, you should notice our value in here, in our input field, is coming from prop.children. That is actually this task name that we have. So that's the way, and this is what we call it two-way binding. That's the way information is coming down to our child. So now we need to find a way to send that information back to the parent. And in order to do that, we're gonna declare here an event that's gonna listen for on change. And what this is gonna do is that every time the field change, every time something is typed in there, it's gonna go ahead and trigger this. And props that updated, just call it updated. Let's go ahead and grab here, updated. It's gonna be equals to, parentheses again. How are we gonna call this? Updated field, I guess. Update field, yeah. Update task, oh, that's perfect. Update task, let's declare our update task right here. Console.log, updated. All right, we save this. Oh, should have saved both of them at the same time. Updated, prostat, updated. See, updated is not defined. Oh, oops, forgot the word this, kind of important. All right, so now when we click here, every time I click, our updated function is being triggered. So right now what we're gonna do is that we need two things, no? One, we wanna make a change in the state so we can actually update the field. And two, we need to have the field that's been changed, no? And in order to target this field, we're gonna actually pass, I want you to remember again, this is a function within a function. So we wanna pass our event to our child, to our function within a function. And we wanna also use index so we know which one is the one that is being modified. So let's go ahead and grab both then here, index and event and ID. And the first thing I want to do is I want to have a constant that is input task. It's not the best name, but just roll with it for now. And this is going to be equals to event.target.value. This is going to actually give us whatever is being typed in the screen. I'm going to assign it to this variable. And what we're going to do here is actually the same thing we already did twice already. We're going to go ahead and assign and create a template for us. It's going to be the one we're going to modify. Now, what we want to do with the templates, we're in the templates, we're going to go ahead and choose the element in the position ID. And that element, we want to change the name, no? And the name of that element is going to be equals to the input task that we have. Let me see if this looks really good so far. Go ahead and grab and modify this. And let's save for this. I'll save this one for good measure. If I click, gonna go ahead and now I can go ahead and make changes. So it's perfect. So right now, just to reiterate again, we're sending the information down with the value and we're getting the information back with the unchanged event. And that's how we're gonna be able to modify all this. Now, before we move to lifecycle methods and what all that cover, are there any questions?
So I have one, and I may be misunderstanding stuff. I mean, this is great. So again, I'm newer to React, so the unidirectional flow of data, I've heard that beaten, that drum beat a bunch, and now it seems like there's a bidirectional flow of data. Is that considered good practice, decent practice in the React, or is this, I don't know. I mean, I see it works obviously, but does that go against like the tenets of React?
No, actually, it's exactly how React will operate. You will see this everywhere, pretty much. Yeah, it's very React-like.
Cool.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other questions? Okay, so let's move along and let's actually start implementing some lifecycle methods here. We want to cover actually 3 lifecycle methods that are the ones that you will see in 99% of the cases. So the first one, let's go ahead and grab our jokes. And I'm tired of this saying all jokes, so let's go ahead and put a new one in there with an API call. And in order to do that, actually, I'm gonna go ahead and I already write down the whole API call, so we don't have to go over every single detail on it. But actually, before that, let's go ahead and just showcase the method. So the first method we're gonna cover is called component did mount. And component did mount is gonna trigger when the component is mounted on the screen. And we don't go into detail into everything that goes on when a React application is loading and that. You pretty much all you have to do is that this is gonna trigger as soon as the component is gonna be displayed, okay, right before the rendering. So as soon as the component is in the virtual DOM, it's gonna be transferred to the actual real DOM. Everything is ready to do that. This is gonna trigger right before rendering. Go ahead and call component mounted. There we go. If I save this, I'm gonna see component mount is triggered, and it should pay close attention. We notice it's triggered right when our component is gonna be displayed on the screen. So this is really useful and really powerful because and this is the concept behind all the lifecycle methods. It allows to control the way we display information and we update the information that we have in hand. So this is going to allow me to make any change I want or any change I need to make before the information is actually displayed or rendered. In this case, there is something that we call side effects in React. And side effects is pretty much anything that has to do with how changes are made to our application, to our components, without that are not caused by elements within our application itself. And 90% of the cases, that's going to be has to do with a database, a login from a user, a call to an API, anything of that sort. It's going to be involved from that. So let's go ahead and do exactly what we talked about. Let's go ahead and do an API call here. And the first thing I want to copy over, actually, before I forget, is I want to declare a global that is going to be our URL that we're going to be calling. And I'm going to have, actually, I'm just going to copy this whole thing. All right, so let's go to this line by line. Let me save this. So, okay, so if I go here, you will notice I have the async here. So that's why that's to use a wait inside. That will allow us to wait for the API call to come back in order to go ahead and display and continue processing this. You don't have to stop everything in JavaScript. We allow JavaScript to continue running. We just wait for this, and when it comes back, we continue processing it. We notice we have a fetch request here, and this URL requires us to send a header. So we're sending a header with the value of set, and we're getting some JSON data. And the JSON data is then converted in this step. And if there is any error through all this, we're going to go ahead and we're going to catch it. And we're going to display it. And what you see here, this is just a styling a console log. So you should put a percentage C in there. You can put a styles as the second value of the console log. And all this is done to get our jog, no? And we're sending that to get jog. And similar to how we did in the list component, we're putting that inside here. So our jog is modified from this one to whatever jog is coming from the API. And I kind of spoil it already. You see it's working, but if I save this, you notice it refresh, and there is our really bad that jog in this game. So here in component demo, we're not going to do it today, but you can also introduce a lot of things to help loading. Actually, now we're talking about that. Let's go ahead and instead of just putting a placeholder jog, let's just put something that says loading ... because if you notice before I save, you notice when we refresh, you notice that there is a period of time where the old jog is being displayed there before the new one kicks in. So if I save it, you see our loading now, and that's a little of a nicer experience for our users. So we'll be component mount. That's when the component is mounted. The other lifecycle methods will trigger when a task, when a change is made in the screen. And we're going to cover two of them. One component should component update and component edit update. So let's go ahead and also actually have some things written down about those two too. Save a little bit of time for us. Component update, component edit update. Okay. All right. So actually, let me comment everything out and uncomment this. So okay, so we have two of them, no? Component update is triggered when a change is made in the screen And we're thinking if this change should, when a change is made to one of the components, we're thinking if we should trigger a re-rendering of that component or not. So if I go ahead and I save this, and component did update happen after that. So if the component actually is being updated, we can do something similar to how we did when the component was being mounted. We can do something when the component is updated in this case. So if I go ahead and I save both this, you notice they don't trigger yet because I haven't make any change. But as soon as I click on something, you notice both then triggering. So any change that is made to the screen, both the components will go ahead and trigger. And this can allow, actually, let me show you something even better here. So you know how I was talking about two component update? Just to reemphasize here, two component update actually takes two properties. It takes the upcoming props and the upcoming state, no? And we always have to return true or false. We return true if we want the element to be, the component to be updated, and false if we want it to don't be updated. So if I go ahead and change this to false and I save it, I can go ahead and I click in our button. I can click everything I want or do as much as I want, but I cannot update anything because we're simply telling the right to don't display any updates, to don't render any updates. Let's go ahead and go one step further with this. This is very interesting to see because this paint a really clear picture of how React is operating under the hood. So I'm gonna go ahead and make a bunch of changes here. I'm gonna click the plus to add a new task. I'm gonna click the X to delete a task. I'm gonna mark this one as complete. And you notice none of them are happening. Nothing is happening because we're returning false. And you notice this if statement we have in here. It's checking if the first element in the list is completed. So what's happening right now? If I go back to my presentation, I go ahead and notice when there is a change in the virtual DOM, that React notice, before making the change to a real DOM, it checks if the real DOM, if it wants us to actually make these changes or not. And in order for React to take this step, we need to tell them that it's okay to display those changes. But the virtual DOM has already been altered. And that's what we notice in this second. So if I go ahead and now I click or fill task as complete, you notice that all the other changes that I already made take place because they were already changed. They already happened. Just we tell React, okay, don't update the component yet. And this thing here, this single lifecycle method is really, really important for you when you're doing things in React to make sure that your application is very efficient. This is where more of the efficiency on React is going to take place. As you think about it, a very simple example of this is if you have a shopping app and you have a side drawer that will have your checkout process, every time you add an item to the basket, you do not have to update the side drawer. You only do that when the user is going to check out. So adding all the prices, all that is not necessary at the moment. But as soon as they go ahead and open the side drawer, you tell React, okay, now I want to update this element. And all the changes will happen and showcase there. So that way your application keep running fast and you don't have to be like playing around with, you have to be waiting around for that or taking longer for that. For right now, for us, we don't have actually a good way to utilize two component updates. So for now, let's just return true in here. Nevertheless, component update has a really neat case scenario here. And this probably was in somebody's mind, if not in yours. If we add a new task, it would be really nice if we can put the cursor in there, no? So we can go ahead and modify the task right away. And I have two query selectors here. And I want to showcase what will happen if we try to do that in our add task function. So if I go ahead and add it here, and uncomment this, and I save it, when I add a new task, you notice that the cursor appearing the task before that one, and that's because the component haven't been updated yet. The real DOM haven't been updated yet. So I'm triggering this before the last task is being displayed. So it's considering this one the last task being displayed. So in order to avoid that, we go ahead and instead of triggering here, let's trigger it when we do component update. And if I go ahead and save this, go ahead and we can add new task, and we can start typing right away. Now this has a bad side effect here. Is that if we go ahead and we try to do something in a different element, you notice the cursor go back to the last one by default. So let's go ahead and add a variable on here on our state that's gonna take care of that. And remember I call it task added. By default, let's put it as false. And oops, that goes outside here. That's why I don't like trailing commas. Okay, so task added is false. We want to change this to true, no? And we want to do it when we add a task. So let's go ahead and declare a second value here. We want task added to be equals to true. Now we don't want this to stay true the whole time, no? So when do we change it? I would say we change it when we actually remove focus from our tag. So let's go ahead and actually this is something that I forgot to do earlier. We notice that when we start editing something, like I make changes, no? I make changes to this and I click away. You notice I click back in it and not only mark it complete will also make me edit it too. So we need to make it be edit only again. And I forgot about this earlier. So let's go ahead and take care of that. For that, we're gonna go back to our task. And there is a very neat event that we can call in here in our input field that is called on blur. And this is gonna be triggered when we actually remove focus from the element. So we're gonna call, how do we call this function? Broce read only, I guess. Yeah, I think that's fine. Read only, copy that, up here, and we want read only to be equals to, and this time we're gonna need the event. Oops, equals to event. And I could leave the parentheses out. I totally would like to add them. And this that read only, we need the event here. So let's copy this, add it. We're taking the event, and all that we want to do is just go ahead and say event that set attributes, and we want to change the read only attribute to true. There we go. So that should do the trick. The read only is the same like here. Perfect. I will save them both. So if I go ahead and I click in here, I edit it. Oh damn, got an issue. Let's see. When I say attributes, this is not a function. All right, let's see what's happening here. So on the event, this is looking good. On blur, pros, read only event, the attribute. Oh, I forgot the word target here. All right, save this. Go ahead and click. Click away. We click on this, and we see we don't see the cursor there anymore. So everything good. We see we still have the issue with the cursor moving to the last element. So let's go ahead and take care of that one. Went ahead and we're ready at our function. And let me see if I can get back to my train of thought. Task added. So now we want to set task added to false, no? So all that we do is that we go back to our read only. We add this and want to change task added to be false. There we go. We save this. We see that I also add an if statement in here. That's going to check if that added is true. And it's going to put the cursor in the last element and make it editable for us. if that's the case. So let's go ahead and save this. I can go ahead and close our task for now. If I go ahead and add a task, I can type it down, and move away from it, mark it complete, incomplete. I can go ahead and remove this element, and we don't get focus on that one. I can go ahead and make changes, and pretty much everything is done in our application. So as I remove some of these console logs from our application, are there any questions?
Yeah, not a question. Just observation, man. This looks great. This is awesome.
Thank you. Yeah, I think,
thank you.
and you know, what you guys just see here, I think it's very, very important, because if you understand what's happening right now, you can go back and look at the talk again. If you understand this, you pretty much understand how React operates. And
Okay.
you get a really good idea of how everything is happening on the screen. And I would say everything just built around this process that we just covered. Are there any other questions? All right, so we have only one thing left to do, and it's to deploy your amazing application. And in order to do that, we use one single command here, and that would be npm run build, and this is an alias for npm build. And this is gonna bundle everything very nicely for us. And actually, instead of running the command, because it's gonna take some time, for the sake of time, I already have one build element in here. So I'm gonna just showcase it to you guys. So it's gonna create this build folder in here. And if we open it, you're gonna notice that everything is like very, very optimized. We have the index that is all bundled up for maximum loading speed, similar to our styles. Everything is just bundled very nicely. And when you have a traditional domain host provider, this well, you can see the index.html here. This will be the folder that you will be actually uploading. In our case, we're going to do something a little bit different, a process that is a little bit less painless than uploading a whole folder. That is going to be utilizing, I don't know if you guys have used Netlify before, but it's going to be utilizing Netlify. And this will be something similar to Cloudflare. And this, at least personally for me, is the quintessential way to deploy a React or a front-end framework application, I would say. And I'm a big fan of them, but I'm pretty sure you can find similar service with other domain providers. So let's go ahead and create a new site in here from GitHub. And I already have a different version of this application in my GitHub. So I'm just gonna go ahead and go to my GitHub here. Searching my repos for the list. We got our list in here. Everything is looking pretty good. I'm just gonna put deploy site, and that's all we have to do. That will automatically deploy your application to a live site, and you have a domain name with that, it's gonna automatically deploy with the domain name. And actually, I wanna go ahead and I forgot how you do this. I think it's in the domain options. I'll go ahead and make this change to the name, so we can go ahead and find it easier. Oh, there we go. Edit some names. Let's call it my amazing React list. Save that. Perfect. All right. And yeah, from there, everything you have to do, if you go here, you have to just wait until this is completed, and that's it. Are there any other questions? All right. So that's pretty much everything I have for you guys today. I'm gonna, let's go back to this in a little bit. I'm just gonna show everything that we have in this slide. So here I just put together just a bunch of resources for us. And if you guys have any question after this, you wanna reach out to me, feel free to reach out to me. My social media is all here, or just leave a comment in the React meeting page. I also create a page here that you guys can, oops, I click on it by mistake, that you guys can go to. And this actually is a link that contains not only the slide, but also I create a small playlist on YouTube of videos that I created, in which I cover every single one of the steps that was done before the talk today. And I already record the videos. I'm gonna upload the videos for everything we cover today tomorrow morning. So you guys can go in there and see all that information, and every single one of the steps, every single time I stop for questions, there is a repo that you guys can look at in GitHub for that, and all the links are there too. Apart from that, uh, I did my amazing drawing in a sketching tool in Concepts. It's a sketching tool. We're using VS Code and just pretty much everything else that we were utilizing here. And here in the right, there's just some resources that you will really need. And the quintessential, I know I talked with Brian the last time about this. The quintessential course on React, I would say, is one course in Udemy that I think is called Learning React, including hooks or something like that. That include everything from start to finish, everything about React. And actually, I know earlier I was mentioning to you, Brian, I was mentioning the ES6 course in Scrimba. Actually, this link has the course on it. And that's just
Okay.
Scrimba, by the way, is a free courses platform. You don't even have to log in. Just go in there, and this course we have everything that is ES6, every single change that is important. Yeah. So it's pretty much everything I have. And before I actually move on, we can see, and you guys can navigate to this link too, by the way. If we click on it, we notice our application is it's being displayed here very nicely. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I have for today. We went from a very mediocre drawing that I make all the way to an application that you guys can navigate to, and is currently live in production. So before I switch it back to you, Brian, are there any other questions? All right, thank you so much, guys.
Yeah, hey, Edwin, thank you so much, Matt. Oh, there we go.
Thank
Somebody
you.
have a question? Oh, okay. Yeah, Matt, this is great. This is phenomenal. I really appreciate the code and the work and the videos and all of that, and the two presentations. Obviously, I think I speak for everyone, but I'm definitely speaking for myself. I picked up a ton this past month with you, so I really appreciate that. As far as questions from me, I mean, like I said, I'm kind of a newbie to React, so I'm definitely going to need to chew on your code a bit and watch your videos, and I may have some questions for you after the fact. So I'm going to take you up on your offer probably. So, but yeah, thank you. Seriously, this is awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah. Well, yeah, guys, I appreciate you coming. Same with Matt, Edwin. We appreciate you sitting through this. Hopefully, it was informative and educational. And yeah, we tentatively have a meeting scheduled for July 8th, I guess, in 2 weeks. We don't have a speaker as of yet. We'll put the invite out once we do get some kind of topic going. And again, if you're interested in presenting, please let us know. All ranges of experience are welcome. So you definitely don't have to be Jedi React person to present. You can be newbie person. So, but yeah, hopefully everybody's staying safe and sane, and hopefully we see you guys and for our next meeting. So, I guess I'll stop the recording now, and I guess we can kind of just hang and mingle, or we can go about our ways. So I'm going to stop this now. Edwin, thank you again.